Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and this week we'll be talking about Project Cheetah, which is about arming the combat drones. That is, the Heron drones with the laser guided ammunition, precision guided ammunition, as well as anti tech missiles and other such aspects. We'll take a detailed look at what exactly is Project Cheetah, how will it benefit our armed forces, and the timeline of the entire project, as well as to by when we can expect this to happen. So, more on this, we joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Retired Major General Ravi Arora. He is the Chief Editor of Indian Military Review. We also have with us retired Air Vice Marshal Sunil Nanotkar, our defense expert, and we're also joined by Mayank Singh, a senior journalist who looks after the defense beat. Let me first start with you, Mayank, and let's start by giving our viewers a bit of a lowdown on what exactly is Project Cheetah and why are we talking about it now?
The project involves unmanned aerial vehicles, and there's a need which arose recently because of the standoff, the kind of tensions which have come up along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. This project Cheetah was supposed to come up earlier itself, but it was somehow, because of various reasons, it was shelved, or rather it was in a dormant stage. Now, when you need the altitude, the conditions of eastern Ladakh, it has also uh, catalyzed this program actually. Now there's a special committee of Defense Secretary Dr. Ajay Prasad, and which is looking into this matter. The
Mhm.
project costing around 3,500 crores and almost 90 heroines, which are coming from Israel side. They are supposed to be finalized, and they'll be armed with specific, precise uh, capabilities, which is like precision guided bombs, or even in fact anti-tank missiles. So that's what it is, and it has come up as per the need which has suddenly arisen in eastern Ladakh.
Okay. So Project Cheetah is something which is not new. It has been there, obviously, but it has been revived now that the need has been felt by our armed forces, and it's all about arming the Heron drones with specific, weapons. Let's now talk about those specific weapons and obviously about Heron as well. And let me start with you, General Arora. Why equip Heron here? That's one. Why Heron? And second is what kind of weapons we are talking about in terms of ensuring that they are combat ready?
See, when the idea was first mooted in 2015 by the Air Force, they thought that if a UAV could go so far and look at so many things and find out information about the enemy and also find good targets, what is the point of coming back or tasking any other resource or fighters to go and destroy the target? It should be armed sufficiently to destroy that target, and there should be a command and control link, just like the armed UAVs or drones which the Americans had been using, the MQ-9 Reaper, which they have effectively used against 2,500 terrorists in the Afghanistan-Pakistan area. So why not do that? And
Mhm.
shortly thereafter, Uri happened, and then this subject got a lot of attention, but somehow the project was shelved. And now that the Chinese have done this mischief, the need has been felt to revive it. But now, what can these, and we will restrict ourselves to only medium altitude, long endurance UAVs, that is the Searcher and the Heron that we have. Uh, why the need has been felt now again is because of the surgical strikes in which we had to send people across, we had to send our aircraft across, and the Chinese as well as the Pakistanis are using UAVs on a big scale every day, even today. And we want to build up this capability. You asked for the weapons. You see, the talks which have been going on with the Israelis, who have to cooperate with us to modify and upgrade these UAVs, they will have air to ground missiles as well as air to ground anti tank guided missiles. They Air Force already has a few copies of the HEROP or Harpy 2, uh, which has about 23 kilos of warhead. And it is an anti-radiation weapon. It goes and looks for radar and all. And it can do a kamikaze type of attack. It's a loitering ammunition kind
Mhm.
and a suicide attack, but it does not carry missiles as such. So, but mind you, you have just talked about, Mayank has talked about the background. It's not only the Chinese whose recent incursions have necessitated that we take this project forward. Right from the Kargil time, 1999, that was a wake-up call. And soon thereafter happened Operation Parakram. That's the time we got the searchers. We used them extensively. I myself had overseen some of these searcher operations at that time. And since then, we have the searcher, the Heron, and the Herop. We had the DRDO's Nishant, but we don't have an armed UAV or combat UAV. So,
Mhm.
you see, uh, we have been developing, the DRDO has been developing, they put in a lot of effort, but in between, sanctions placed by the Americans prevented us from developing the combat UAVs, that is the Rustam 2 and the Rustam H, which
Okay.
is the RDO, and the Aura, which is still in the pipeline. So it actually went into deep freeze for some time. 1,500 crores rupees spent on the Rustam already, and now more funds have been given. But I'm not so sure whether Rustam 2 is being developed only as a intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance thing with electro-optic sensors, with electronic warfare, ELINT comment sensors. But definitely the Aura is going to be, it's a very heavy, high altitude, long endurance drone. It
Okay.
is being developed as in the on the lines of the MQ-9 Reaper.
Okay.
Meanwhile, you remember there was talk, we did a program together, there was talk that we are going to buy some copies of the MQ-9 Reaper, also
Mhm.
Christian Predator, the Predator B, at first, or Guardian B, first for the Navy, and then it was thought for the Air Force also. Again, because of high costs, it went into the deep freeze. And that has also been revived. The Americans were reluctant to export these things. Uh, President Trump of USA has just last week cleared the sale of high technology combat drones to friendly countries. A lot of
Okay.
things are happening, and I can come to it later.
Okay. Definitely.
Everywhere. Yeah.
There are quite, other important aspects when we talk about combat drones or armed drones. Let me bring in AVM Nanotkar here as well. AVM Nanotkar, your views on not only on Project Cheetah, wherein obviously 90 Heron drones are to be equipped with different kind of weapons to make them combat ready. But specifically, what kind of weapons are we looking at here, which can be used with Heron drones? They can be equipped with it, and the kind of range or their effectiveness we're talking about here.
Yeah, so Vishal, I will start with the weapons that you asked. You just covered. I think Mayank, in his opening remarks, he covered that we are likely to arm these UAVs with Spice and Spike missiles.
Mm-hmm.
That is, Spice are the precision bombs which we have used. Now, Spice bomb is generally, associated with Balakot attack, but that was a very heavy bomb. And what might come on Heron is a lighter version of it, because the capacity, the payload carrying capacity of Heron is much lesser. And also the Spike missile, which is already bought, anti-tank missile, which has been bought by Army, which is a short-range missile. But they have got a couple of versions that is ranging from a little longer range than what we have bought, and a very extended range or a extremely long range missile, which is to the tune of about 30 to 35 kilometers. That is the range up to which it can strike a moving target
Okay.
of a nature of a tank. So these are the primary weapons. Basically, what I would like to put it across is precision guided weapons, because the Heron already carries a laser designated pod. So it can carry a internal pod, designator pod. It can designate the laser beam onto the target, and we can have a combination of weapons which are riding over this laser beam to carry out a very precise attack. And while we talk in terms of these weapons which will come as a modified weapons, but in the long run, I'm sure that we are looking at indigenous weapons also which are under development to be carried by these aircraft in long run. So there will be a little bit of compatibility requirements of those weapons getting on. So it's not restricted to these specific weapons. In long run, once this aircraft comes to us, we will have our weapon systems also onto that. And actually, this project started in 2009, 2010. It's that long back that this project came about. And what General Arora mentioned about 2015, that is the time Indian Army also realized that they would also be, wanting these kind of machines. So this project got amalgamated into Army and Air Force project, and subsequently, of course, Navy was all the way along with the Air Force all this while. This project went into a little bit of coma, I would say, because of various differences of opinions between the three services and MOD regarding the basic requirement itself. Then, of course, the Rustam was taking off that time. And then thereafter, there was a requirement of many other which were aircraft Herons which were lost in accident, whether they would be part of this project. So there are many such issues. It was not the operational requirement which came about. Now we are talking in terms of emergent requirement, but the requirement was felt as far back as 2009, and with many other projects that happened, that the platform is being looked at by DRDO or any other agencies within the country, and the OEM of this aeroplane was willing to give us a lot of leeway with this development. There were two different projects seen all together. One was weaponization of Heron, and other one was upgrade of Heron. Now both these projects have been combined together. So now we will have the SATCOM capability on all Herons. We will have the auto takeoff landing capability on all the Herons, which was acquired in piecemeal between all the three services and NTRO. So it's a big mix of things that got into this delaying the process. But like I keep saying, Der aaye durust aaye is the always the news with Indian Armed Forces and our procurement processes. But this thing was going on from 2009, and along keeping this in mind, our DRDO was also developing certain weapons for UAV-like platforms or small helicopters-like platforms. So all in all these things are going to play dividends once we arm the Heron. And mind you, arming a Heron is not the last step we should stop at, because like General Arora said, AURA is our indigenous program. I don't know how many years it is going to take, but in the meanwhile, since the warfare is moving towards a combination of unmanned and manned weapon systems for all the three services, and also in certain cases paramilitary services, because Vishal, that we have internal problems wherein a lot of UAVs are employed today. So even that will have to be considered when we talk in terms of weaponization of UAVs. And I hope cognizance of taken of this.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting point, and a broad spectrum of how UAVs are really important from the security perspective, not only the external but the internal security as well, and obviously the need to weaponize or rather arm these UAVs to make them combat ready. That brings me to the point, Mayank, wherein both the general and the AVM had pointed out one important aspect, and that is there are different kind of drones or UAVs which we have right now, or which we are acquiring as well, be it Heron, Haroop, or the indigenous capability as well, Rustam, Aura also, which is being worked upon. So one is compatibility aspect. Second is our needs and such as our requirements and what we have or what we need to get. So how do we look at this particular combination here?
My answer is actually, since this program has started discussing very specific things and lots of students watch this program, I have to quote two books here actually. And one of them was written in 1994. and the title is India's Ad Hoc Arsenal, written by Chris Smith of SIPRI. Then comes 2010, and Stephen Cohen and Sunil Das Gupta write Arming Without Aiming. By these two examples, actually, they are to sum up how there has been a haphazard planning or the capability building plan, long-term capability building vision. I mean, these things had not been so well aligned earlier also. But in the recent years, there had been a certain push. Coming to the specific point, actually, let's say all the forces, they have a long-term integrated perspective plan, which is integrated perspective plan actually. And then you have service specific plans. Then when you start equipping yourself, the welfare of the soldier. So when you say unarmed, or when you say unmanned aerial vehicle, it is to keep your soldier out of the danger, but still keeping the endurance of the place, endurance, let's say, to capability to function in one of the most difficult situation that comes.
Okay.
So this particular Cheetah project is part of that only actually.
Okay.
When you are raising the capability, when you are raising the endurance of your equipment, and at the same time, there is a unbridled and continuous flow of information from the particular area wherein you are moving in. So actually, when your this program is about revival of Cheetah. So the need-based program which has been revived, and both the officers, they have called it out, they have briefed us that it has been happening since long. So one of the aspects which has to be tackled well in terms of, let's say, planning is arming with a particular capability vision, with an integrated perspective plan, and we should stick to it. Then
Okay.
Cheetah, then you'll never require to revive programs, because that will be part of the flow.
Okay.
And special sanctions, special approvals, they'll come in between as per the need basis, but that will not shock you. That will not, as AVM Nanotkar used the term coma, you will never have it to be shaken out of your coma, and it will be very smooth plan.
Okay, definitely. Planning is a really important aspect here. And as Mayank is pointing out, the revival of Project Cheetah is all about ensuring that the endurance is maintained and the capability is enhanced as well. That brings me to the benefits and the advantages part of it. General Arora, once it's done, Project Cheetah is done, presuming the Herons are equipped accordingly as per the needs. What kind of advantages or benefits we are looking at? Obviously, one you referred to in terms of ensuring that fighter aircrafts need not be employed or deployed for specific missions like the surgical strikes which were done earlier.
See, remember, our enemy number one now is China. Forget Pakistan. Pakistan does not require very long endurance, high altitude, armed UAVs to tackle them. For operations like surgical strikes or even larger operations in conventional wars, against China, we require something autonomous which can go up to Lasha. It is required to find and to fix, to track targets, to engage them, and to destroy them. That is the challenge. And whatever we are producing so far will take many years. So it's good that this opportunity is being utilized to go in for fast track procedure and emergency purchases or upgrading our currently available UAVs so that they can be turned into combat UAVs in a short duration. But what do we require to do? The advantages are many. Everybody is using them. The Americans have been using them. Chinese have sold 300 of these medium and high altitude UAVs to Saudi Arabia. They are going to manufacture them in Saudi Arabia. UAE has used them in Yemen against the rebels. The Houthis have used them against Saudi Arabia Aramco refinery. Turkey is using them against Kurds in Syria, in Iraq. Everywhere these armed UAVs, combat UAVs are being used. We must have them. We don't have them so far. But there are challenges we have to overcome. Now, you see, I now see that the DRDO had already announced that for Rustam 2, they are going to engage with the private sector. A whole lot of companies now have licenses. They have had joint ventures formed. I can name many of them: L&T, Tata Advanced Systems, Tata Power SED, Mahindra Defence, Data Patterns, Bharat Forge, Alpha Design, Dynamatics, Adani and Elbit have a JV, HAL, Asteria Aerospace, Cadet Systems. These are the major players who want a piece of the pie. If we involve them, we can get this sooner, because each of these UAVs, even without arming, cost 40 to 80 crore rupees each. Imagine, after all these things are developed into armed UAVs, they're going to cross 100 crores. The cost of a Tejas was recently decided at 450 crores. A UAV, 100 crores. You get 4 or 4.5 of such combat UAVs for the cost of a Tejas, but it's worth it. It's worth it. These, there is deniability, there is survivability. They are not easy to tackle. They can deliver their payload much more safely. The warfare is going towards unmanned warfare. The Americans are developing a future infantry combat vehicle with both options. It can be manned, it can be unmanned. They're thinking of the tank to be unmanned, the fighter to be unmanned. So we are moving towards unmanned warfare. This is the need of the hour. The sooner we get it and sooner we overcome these problems of propulsion, we are developing propulsion, electro-optics, thermal imagery, command and control. These require satellite links and teaming with the fighters. The sooner we develop them, the better it is. The time has come that the Chinese have copied everything and done it. We don't copy, we don't steal, but we have the talent, we have the dimag to do it. Let's get them together with the private sector and produce these things.
Okay, so the push to indigenization is what you're talking about. Obviously, taking along the private sector as well. That brings me for the last question to AVM Nanaotkar. AVM Nanaotkar, not only the strategic benefits of having an combat-ready weaponized drone, but also the point which General Arora is making here, that is giving a push to the indigenous developing and manufacturing of unmanned or unarmed drones as well, which can then later be equipped with weapons. This is the need of the movement, as General Arora is pointing out. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with General Arora. First of all, Vishal, I would like to bring in that accountability factor into this entire game, because over last decade or two, in fact, almost 2 decades, we have been going into, in fact, I will remind General Arora about Laksha. Laksha is the first, unmanned vehicle we started, developing here. And from there, Laksha, of course, is in service now. But then then came Nishan, then came Rustam. Now, these are all programs going on, but when it comes to deliverables to the defense services, there is none, actually. Okay, and there is no accountability on that front. Now, first of all, we will have these vehicles and we will have no engines for it, because ultimately the engines that we were looking at, they have been phased out or they are facing problems about supply chain management. So all these factors come in when we prolong our programs to this effect. On top of that, if you want to weaponize it, that means you have to have the basic sensors that you started off with and additional sensors for using it alongside weapons. So, all in all, when you see this, how our internal programs go through, I think it is a good idea that, private players have now started entering into this. But one of the factors remains as to that MOQ part of it, as to actually, are they going to get the orders from defense services? So there has to be some policy shift that there we have to, think about. And I think some kind of talk is going on, but unless it comes out on paper on ground, it is not going to help us to any of these private players who are trying to bring in. And what happens is, once this kind of news spreads, everybody is rushing towards, acquiring these kind of capabilities, which is also a bad thing as far as our country is concerned. Anyway, I will keep that aside.
The strategic benefits part.
Yeah, strategic benefits you spoke about. There is a mission and operational control station that is supposed to be set up in the country. That means all the UAVs countrywide. General Arora spoke about the primary enemy being China and secondary being Pakistan, or whichever way, or internal operations. All the UAVs, wherever you have launched from the services, they can be controlled from one mission station, which can be a command control station based in Delhi or wherever, whichever, and with one standby station, so as to have a redundancy. So that is one of the biggest benefits. And we all know that Americans operate like that. They operate in Afghanistan with a control station in US mainland. So there is a little bit of security issues out there. So that is one thing that is very predominant in this program, which was always there. Now it has taken a front seat, and hopefully within next 2 to 3 years, we should see the light of the day as far as this program is concerned. So when you talk about strategic employment of this kind of system, it is enormous. It is enormous. And combination of manned and unmanned vehicles are going to give you much more dividend than what you gain from today's surveillance being carried out by surveillance UAVs and manned aircraft going and carrying out attacks. He spoke about Herop and Harpy. These are the weapons we have been having for last 20 years. We should have learned from those weapons as to what we require and modified our weapon systems accordingly many years back. But even now, it is not too late if we have the right choice of platform and the weapons, looking at the future as per the LTIPP that Mayank spoke of, because this is all documented. This is all going on over the years. So I think we need to, it's a big wake-up call for us to look into these and execute it in a time-bound manner. Unless we do that, whether it is government agencies or private agencies, somebody has to take a stock and decide what we want to do and execute it. That execution part of it is lacking for many, many years. That is where we need to put in our all efforts.
Okay. Thank you so much there. As ABM Nanotka is pointing out, it's never too late to go ahead and realize your needs and requirements and act accordingly. And obviously, execution is a very important part. And when it comes to indigenous or indigenization of working on these technologies, accountability, it becomes the most significant aspect. Thank you so much once again, ABM Nanotka, General Arora, and Mayank as well for sharing your views with us. So this is all about Project Cheetah, which is focused on weaponizing or making the unmanned drones, UAVs, combat ready. And this is just one part of it. But obviously, the larger picture involves much more significant use of such platforms in the days to come, because future warfare or future security needs are going to be really different from what they were yesterday or what they are today. Once again, I will come back next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you.